Now the promised application of solving through a system of ordinary differential equations. Let us look at a problem that we understand, and let us look at a problem that we understand we can visualize much better than an electrical system, for example. I believe that this example of a mechanical system that we are going to look at, where these are fixed surfaces, these are two walls and then the floor, and we have two masses placed on this, and we assume that the friction of these masses, let us assume that the friction is 0. For example, you can imagine them to be blocks of ice placed on ice, so there is almost no friction between them and they can freely move. Although this looks smaller than this one, but let us assume both have a mass of m and are equal in all aspect. And you know that when we deal with such systems, we take the masses to be point masses. And let us assume that this mass is tied to this wall with a spring constant of k, and exactly the same spring, same distance, even if this looks smaller than this one, but assume this is the same spring, same distance, and the spring constant is k, and then there is a spring between these two masses, and the spring constant for this is different, and let us write it like this capitalized, stylized K, capital K, to indicate that these two springs are the same, this one is different, the masses are same, there is no friction here, these are rigid points, and the masses can freely move if perturbed, if one of the mass or both of the masses are basically moved from their equilibrium positions. In this direction, we are taking the x, the displacement, to be positive for this mass, and let us say this displacement from the equilibrium position is x1 and this displacement is x2. Then you can fairly easily see that we would try to come up with two equations in the displacements x1 and x2. And then we will have a system of linear differential equation, and you can very easily see that the rate of change of this x1 here, the rate at which this mass moves or this displacement changes, is going to be not only dependent on x1, the value of x1 itself, whether x1 is this mass has been moved too far or in this direction or is at the equilibrium. The rate of change, the velocity, or we can term this in terms of the acceleration, will not only depend on x1 but also x2. So if this mass have moved this way and this mass has also moved this way, its acceleration would be different than if it would have been moved this way, or if this mass would have been here but this mass moves here, then this x1 will change based on how this x2 changes as well. So we are going to get two differential equations, and by looking at the problem we have taken is too symmetrical. So because of the symmetry of the problem, we assume that we are going to get a solution that is symmetrical as well. So whether you are looking at the system from the side or from the top, it still looks the same. So in order to come up with differential equations, we need to understand the forces on each of the mass. Then there are two physical laws that govern the forces on M. Here we have two m's, one m's. One of the law is that you understand is the Newton's law, that says that a force on something because of motion is equal to F is equal to ma, because masses will be moving, so F is equal to ma would be in action. And the other law is the Hooke's law. Whenever there is a mass with a spring that is controlling its motion, then the force on the that is being applied or acting on the mass is given as minus kx, where x is the displacement and a is the acceleration. This k is known as the spring constant. And this x is basically describing the displacement, and this whole equation describing the motion under the spring forces. So how to write the system of equations? So let us consider forces on each mass separately. So for the first mass, this mass, it's moving, so there is a displacement x, and we know the Newton's law based force would be acting on it, and it would be experiencing, because of the motion, a force m x1 double dot, that is a. Acceleration is the second derivative of displacement. So this mass will have a force acting on it because of its own motion, and then it will be equal to the force because of this spring, and that would be equal to minus small k x1, and also this spring would be acting on this one, and it would be with a spring constant k capital. And if this x2 is, this mass is fixed here, and basically this x1 is only changing, this mass is fixed, then we would have minus k x1 here only. It would be just like that we have a single mass with a single spring with a spring constant of k plus capital K. But here we see that if this mass is here, then this is going to experience this force, spring based force once. But if this mass is closer to this, then the force is not only dependent on x1 but also on x2. So where is this mass located? Here on the equilibrium, closer to this one or away from this one, is going to affect this, the force on this mass as well. So it is not only dependent on x1 but also instead on x2. So suppose x1 and x2 are equal, they move in unison. So we have two masses and they move together. So if in this motion you can see that the middle spring is like it's not there. It may be a bar connecting the two masses. The effect of capital K is gone if the motion is this way. However, the effect is multiplied if this moves closer to this one, then the force because of the middle spring would be larger, because it is this mass with this spring is rigid on one point but moving on the other, but this spring has both ends moving. So when they move closer, lot of force; when they move away, a lot of force would be there because of the spring constant capital K. So you see, we can envision that there would be two motions possible in this fashion moving together, and this fashion moving towards each other and away from each other simultaneously. However, when both of these motions add together, we are going to see something that looks like a random motion, because as we expect that the frequency with which both move together would be different, and the frequency with which both move in this fashion would be different. So when these two frequencies based terms add together, they are going to have both the frequencies present in it. So the overall motion may look different. So this could best be explained through an animation, but a computer animation would do good. So I would try to share an animation with you in order to explain these points. So however, this is the first equation, and because the system is very symmetric, we are going to get a second equation that can very similarly be written as this way. So this is the system of differential equations that we need to solve. And if you look at it closely, this is not a first order differential equations. These are second order differential equations, are still homogeneous and still linear. So these are second order linear homogeneous differential equations, and we can convert them to matrix form in this way. So we have m, both have m in it, and the second derivative with respect to time of a vector x1 and x2, and if you order them together, because here we need the coefficient with x1, and with x1 we have minus k, but here we have x1 as well, so minus small k minus capital K. So we are going to get minus small k plus capital K, and here we have x2 term, that is capital K. Here we need the x1 term, which is capital K, and here because of symmetry we are going to have minus small k plus capital K. This is the matrix A and the vector x. So we can see that we can write this in matrix form as x double dot m into x double dot capital A, the 2 by 2 matrix, into x. So while we have seen how to solve a first order system of first order homogeneous linear differential equations, and this is a second order linear homogeneous differential equation system of second order homogeneous linear differential equations, but the method to solve this is similar. So very carefully we are going to work this solution for this, and this still we will see would can be done in the same form. So up till now, basically we have tried to understand how to write a system of differential equations for a case that we can easily comprehend, and we know, all of us probably have studied this in mechanics. So try for example, up till this part, you can try writing the system of differential equation. It's not something that I'm going to give you in exam, but you can at least try to writing the matrix equation, this equation m x double dot is equal to ax for the following case. So suppose here we have a wall and a floor, again two masses, but this time both of the springs are same, both of the masses are same. So take this as x1, take this as x2, try to convert this system. Well, again, it is assumed that there is no, this floor actually continues because they have to move. There is no friction between the masses and the surface. So try solving for this case and coming up with these equations, and if possible then even going beyond this and do the analysis that we would be doing now for that case. So here how we used to solve these. So try x, the vector x, to be an eigenvector e raised to the power rt. So instead of lambda, I'm taking r, because soon you will see that there is a reason I have taken this r, because this problem actually, because of this m, is a little different from the other problems. X dot is equal to ax. So I want to call lambda to be the eigenvalue of an equation that we will encounter soon, and this r to be the part of this solution. Okay, let us try this. So if this is a solution, if we put in this equation, it should satisfy it, and we are going to get m, and the double derivative of this thing is going to give us r square and v. E raised to power rt will later be cancelled, and here we are going to get a v, and e raised to power rt is going to be cancelled, and we are going to get this. And you can now see that this is, if we write it in that form, this is an eigenvalue problem. So here the lambda is equal to mr square, or in other words, this r is actually equal to lambda over m square root plus minus. So you see, because of the second order differential equation, although in solving this equation, if we take mr square equal to lambda, that is same eigenvalue problem, we are going to get two values of lambda, but for each value of lambda we are going to get two values of r. So in total we are going to get four values of r. So for one value of lambda we are going to get an eigenvector v1, and the other value of lambda we are going to get eigenvector of v2. So for each eigenvector v1 and v2, each of them, we are going to have two values of r. So we are going to use, if we are going to encounter complex conjugate eigenvalues and or eigenvectors, then we are going to use the principle of superposition to find the ultimate solution. So if this is the case, so then in solving this, let us first find the eigenvalues. So how do we solve this? By solving this, the determinant of a minus lambda I to be equal to 0. So this is a minus lambda I, we know what is I, would become a matrix. So let me not use the matrix notation but the determinant notation. So the first element of A is this one, and this minus lambda I would be equal to minus k plus capital K plus lambda, this term the same as well because of symmetry, and this term the same in the original matrix. So we get K plus capital K plus lambda square, because this negative signs cancels, and minus K square to be equal to 0. So we can write this as K plus capital K plus lambda square to be equal to, and we can take the square root of both sides to get, this is very important, most of the students does this step wrong, because when they take the square root of both sides, they say okay, the squares cancels and then K plus capital K plus lambda is equal to capital K. That's wrong. Whenever there is a square root in action, we get the plus minus signs on the one side, and this is going to give us the two values of lambda. Now you can see one of the lambda 1 would be equal to plus capital K minus small k minus capital K, that is minus small k, and the other value of lambda would be minus capital K minus small k minus capital K, and we are going to get minus small k or minus small k plus 2 capital K. Now this is something that deserves an explanation. And by the way, you see the eigenvalues no, I think we should not make a comment about the eigenvalues because we ultimately need this R. A very important comment that can be made here is, let me write them clearly here. So lambda that we are going to get have two values, minus k, this is a spring constant of these springs, and minus k plus 2 times k. So as you may have the insight to see that this value of lambda will ultimately translate into a sinusoidal motion, and that sinusoidal motion, or the vibration actually, is going to be dependent on small k only. So there will be a term in the solution that is dependent on small k only, and the other term will be dependent on this thing. So why we are going to get such a term that is not dependent on capital K? So while both of the terms dependent on small k, this term does not have capital K in here, and this term not only have the capital K in it, but twice of capital K. How can we describe this? Try to understand this. So the motion of these two masses, while in real life, if you can imagine, okay, let us stretch this one and releases it, both of them will start moving and their motion will look quite random. But in reality, there would be two distinct modes of motion, and they would be contributing to the overall random motion. So one of the mode, as I have explained, would be that both of them moving together. In this case, the center spring would at best feel like it is not there. So the capital K is not playing any role, both of them moving together. And in the other mode, both of them goes away together, come towards each other together, stop, move away together. And in this mode, you can see the center spring is playing double its role, because while the springs with K act on a single mass, once the role of that capital K spring, constant spring, is doubled on the on the masses. And you can see that this understanding of that system is fairly represented by these two eigenvalues that we get. Okay. So let us find the eigenvectors. So we can compute and find the eigenvectors. By the way, these are the eigenvalues, and we have seen that R is equal to, so R for lambda 1, R1 would be equal to plus minus square root of minus k over m, which would be plus minus iota square root of k by m. So here in the solution we are going to get R that are complex or imaginary values. So it means we are going to use the principle of superposition. And similarly, if lambda is equal to minus k plus 2 capital K, then we are going to deal with R2 equal to plus minus iota square root of k plus 2 times capital K over m. For simplicity's sake, let us say we know that whenever we have the term in the exponent of this exponent, this R, if we have an imaginary part here or a complex quantity here, we use the principle of superposition to solve this, and that ultimately gets translated because of Euler's identity to sinusoidal functions, cosine and sine. So we know that this coefficient R will ultimately become a frequency in the solution. So let us assume this is equal to plus minus iota some frequency omega 1, where omega 1 is square root of k by m, and this is equal to say plus minus iota omega 2, where omega 2 is some frequency that is equal to small k plus 2 times capital K over m. So by this basically change of variable, we are trying to simplify things. So let us find the eigenvectors. How would the eigenvectors be found? You can remember this equation, and you know that through this equation A minus lambda I into V equal to 0, 0 is a vector here as well. We are going to find the two eigenvectors for each value of lambda. So what will be V1 equal to, let us say V1 is equal to V1 1 and V1 2. So this would be equal to, we understand this to be based on this equation that A minus lambda I, we know what is lambda. So for one value of lambda 1 equal to minus k, we will have something like minus k plus minus k minus capital K and minus k, that will cancel minus k and plus k, and we are going to get capital K here, and this capital K would occur as is, and this capital K as is, and this capital K because of this symmetry, and V11 V12 is equal to, sorry, this is a vector, and you can see the first row is equal to the second row. So the one equation that we have here is V11 plus V12 equal to 0, which gives V1 to be equal to, if V11 is 1, then V12 is minus 1. And similarly for lambda equal to minus k plus 2 capital K, we can see that we are going to get minus k plus minus k minus capital K plus small k, so small k cancelled, and plus 2k. So we are going to get what are we going to get? Plus k or minus capital K. I think I have missed something here. Oh yes, here we have minus capital K, and the ultimate solution would be, so the first row, second row is equal to the negative of the first row, so we get this, and therefore these both are plus ones, 1 1, and here we are going to get plus k plus k plus k and plus k into V21 V22 equal to 0 0, and this is going to give us V2 equal to 1 minus 1 as in the previous case. So we have found the eigenvalues and we have found the eigenvectors, and the eigenvectors basically can give you an insight into what I was talking about a little earlier. So look at this eigenvector. This is 1 1. So one of the term in the solution is going to have eigenvector v1, and this is going to tell that x1 is equal to x2. x1 is equal to x2. We have tried to look at these things, and when the other term is 0, then this part will tell that x1 is equal to x2. So what does x1 equal to x2 tell? That x1 and x2 move together. So whatever the size of x1, x2 moves the same amount in both directions. So basically, when this term, because of this eigenvector, is dominant and the other is absent, is 0, but then both move together. This is the first mode of what would we call this, of operation. And then this, when this eigenvector is dominant and this is 0, we will get x1 equal to minus x2. So when x1 is increasing by the same amount, x2 is decreasing. So you see, when this is going this way, this is coming this way. So together, and then together, their motion is negative of each other. This is the second mode of operation, and the frequency of this mode, when this would be in action, this part, it relates to lambda 1 is equal to minus k, and when lambda 1 is equal to minus k, we have plus minus iota omega 1, or the frequency of operation would be this one. So the frequency here would be omega 1 is equal to square root of k by m, does not depend on capital K, and the frequency of operation of this mode would be omega 2, and that would be small k plus 2 times capital K over m. I think this makes perfect sense, and this gives us a lot of confidence that if we can take up a practical application or example and apply the concepts logically each step at a time, and we are able to understand the nature of the problem, then the solution and the beauty of mathematics, even by looking at such a complicated problem, can give us a fair insight into what is going to happen. So there are two modes of operation in this complicated two mass system. That says that if both of the masses move together, or both of the masses move uh, unlike the other one, so one moving towards the left, the other moving towards the right, and so on. So basically both of these modes will be operating together on the system, and in real life you would see both of them moving like a random motion. I think this would be more clear if I would present to you an animation that I would try to provide to you. So the lecture continues. Let me take you a step closer to the actual solution, although whatever we have discussed till now is what was to be discussed here to be understood. But if we were to reach to the solution, then you should note that we had lambda 1 is equal to minus k, and lambda 2 is equal to minus k plus 2 times capital K. So for this we got two values of R, plus iota omega 1 and minus iota omega 1, and here two values of R as well, plus iota omega 2 minus iota omega 2, and here omega 1 was equal to square root of k by m, and here omega 2 was equal to square root of k plus 2 capital K over m. And then we found that for this lambda 1, and both of these are values of R, we had an eigenvector that was equal to 1, 1. Both move in the same direction, and an eigenvector v2 here, and the eigenvector in this case is in this particular example is both the eigenvectors are real. So however, because the eigenvalues here or the values of R are not real, therefore we need to use principle of superposition. So how to use this is, so the ultimate solution, that is x1 and x2 vector, would be equal to the real part of this eigenvector v1 multiplied by e raised to the power omega 1 t plus the imaginary part of v1 e raised to the power omega 1 t. How do we get the real part of okay, I'm missing the iota, sorry. The real part of iota, e raised power iota omega 1 t, and the imaginary part of this thing. So if you remember that if we have a complex number, so J is in engineering, then in order to get a real quantity, we can add, and especially when we are dealing with complex conjugate pairs, then if we have one of the quantities a complex quantity and the other one is complex conjugate, then in order to get a real value out of this, the principle of superposition says we can have the overall practically a physical real life system would have both of them added together divided by 2. This is going to give us the real value of z1, and when both of them are subtracted from one another, and divided by 2 iota. This is going to give us the imaginary value of the complex number. So this is only true when we are dealing with complex conjugate values. If the values are not complex conjugate, which is highly unlikely that we are going to get anything like this for practical physical systems, this is what we are going to do, plus the real part of v2 e raised power iota omega 2t plus the imaginary part of v2 e raised power iota omega 2t. And we can use constants here. So there is some constant here, say C1, a constant here, say C2, a constant here, say C3, and a constant here, say C4. Now you can see, the V's, the eigenvalues, the eigenvectors are not imaginary, they are real. So they can come out from this as well. So we are going to get C1, V1. The real part of this is going to be cos of omega 1t, C2, V1. The real part of this is going to be, imaginary part of this is going to be sine omega 1t. So both sinusoids have the same frequency, plus C3. The real part of this going to be cos of omega 2t plus C4. The imaginary part would be sine omega 2t. And you can see that this can be written as V1 C1 cos of omega 1t plus C2 sine of omega 1t plus V2 C3 cos of omega 2t plus C4 sine of omega 2t. Because these are vectors, we are going to get values of x1 and x2. But what I wish to emphasize is that this sum of two sinusoids with the same frequency and different coefficients would still be a sinusoid of the same frequency with a different phase angle. So this phase angle can be computed. So this multiplied by this V1 plus some constant B multiplied by V2 cos of omega 2t plus theta 2 would be that vector x equal to, or x1 would be equal to a, V1 has 1, a cos of omega 1t plus theta 1 plus b cos of omega 2t plus theta 2. I hope you remember the concept of phasor, where a sinusoidal quantity like v cos of omega t plus theta can be written as a phasor quantity, a complex quantity in polar form as v and angle theta. This is a complex quantity, actually v e raised power iota theta. And you can use the concept of phasor actually to solve for this theta 1 and theta 2 here, and this a and b. And x2 would be equal to a cos of omega 1t plus theta 1, and because v2 has this minus 1 here, minus b cos of omega 2t plus theta 2. So that would be the ultimate solution we are going to get would be of this form. So we are going to have in both of the displacements, the displacement of both of the masses would have a sinusoid of frequency omega 1, not dependent on capital K, and a sinusoid of frequency omega 2 that is dependent on twice of capital K. And it is basically, if we look at them in isolation, x1 would be moving in this way, x2 would be moving in this way, but together, if we can evaluate them, then when the second terms are 0, both of them are moving in the same way, but when this term is 0, both of them are moving opposite to one another, and these are, therefore we have two modes of motion in here. I hope this, while the example was lengthy, I do not intend to provide such a problem in exam, because in writing the equations, differential equations, I cannot provide an unseen question actually that you have not covered first. So while I can still provide a question of this form that is a bit similar to this question or this question, but not something very new, unless I am going to cover, I will try actually to cover an example where we are going to look at an electrical system and come up with a system of differential equations, so that we can have some relation of what we have studied with the degree that you are pursuing, and we should be able to solve that. If I am able to give that example, then I would put such questions in exam as well. That would be a bit similar. Although you should not be scared of what the exam questions would look like. And any teacher, any good teacher is going to keep that in view, that an exam is something that you take up in, you attempt under stress and with a very limited time. And it's actually because of the limitation of time that you have all the stress. So the exams are always simple for those who actually pay attention to the concepts and who ultimately get to learn the concepts and try to do problems on their own. So best of luck. This actually concludes the course, and if there are some tidbits that are left, I would cover them in a few more videos. Otherwise, I am going to review the course and present to you some solved examples and etc. in the next week.